innovation is a term that's now very fashionable and is thrown around quite a bit. And my definition comes from the Stanford Social Innovation Review, which defines social innovation as a novel solution to a social problem where the value accrues primarily to society. But it says that this doesn't have to be a new technology or a new idea. It can be an adaptation or a slight improvement, a more efficient way of doing something that is already in existence. It can be a piece of legislation, a social movement, and social innovation can occur in the private sector, the public sector, and civil society. What's unique about it is that the benefit accrues to millions and millions of people, not just to a select few. Now, scaling is also another very controversial topic, and we could have a discussion here about what it means to scale. But the authorities on the field say that scaling differs based on what is being scaled. So if you're scaling a program, you have a different approach versus scaling a product. We all see fast food chains. I got to London and saw, Prêt à Manger, and I was like, it's already here in every corner. So they know how to scale, either through a franchise model or whatever approach they're taking. So in the private sector, we've seen very, very ample models of scaling. Starbucks has scaled all over this country as well, and there are many examples. But in the social sector, we don't have as many examples of initiatives that started in one part of the world that have made a huge difference that is now global. And even the big names like Grameen and BRAC have struggled to scale outside their countries. Now, this is a very personal issue because I live in a city that has infrastructure for 3 million, but currently has a population of 20. And it's expected to get to 50 million by 2050. On Wednesday night, I was on the 3rd Mainland Bridge, the longest bridge in Africa, for 2.5 hours. And you could just not move an inch. And some of you in the audience might have read and followed the stories of what happened in Nigeria 2 days ago, where a young boy was mobbed and killed. And a lot of my friends in the UK wrote they're going to renounce their citizenship, they're so disgusted with their country. And I said, excuse me, there are lots of bright spots in our country and lots of great people. The issue is that they're not scaling fast enough to address the immense poverty, the deprivation, and the challenges. If you place 1 million people in this room, trust me, we'll start beating each other up. Just the heat alone, right? The fact that I haven't eaten all day. On that bridge, I was thinking, gosh, how many of us need to use the bathroom? We've stuck here for 3 hours. How many of us haven't eaten all day? And the number of cars that broke down on the bridge in that space of time. So this happens when you don't scale good initiatives. You can't meet the needs. And it's not just Nigeria. Africa is expected to get to 2.4 billion by 2050. And I worry as an African about who's going to feed these people, where they're going to live. What about sanitation, water, energy? We say 600 million don't have access to electricity. What will happen when we are 2.4 billion? So there's an urgent need for scaling high impact interventions. So when I came up with this need that I had as a very personal one, I decided to enroll in a senior fellowship at the Harvard School of Government, the Kennedy School, created an online tool to really ask social innovators, why aren't you scaling? What challenges are you facing? I've interviewed about 80 social innovators, funders of social innovation, academics, to really understand what they had observed, and had 2 great mentors. Professor Pamela Hardingen of the School Center at Said Business School, who recently passed away, was a great mentor and a support network as I wrote this book. And then, as you guys know, and you heard in my bio, I've also started a number of social initiatives. And Leap Africa was started in 2002. We've done quite a bit of work in the country, changing mindsets of young people. And I started Leap because I was angry about the concept of leadership and how many people thought you had to have a position to lead. And so what Leap tries to do is create change agents who will transform the country. And we tell young people they're leaders of today and tomorrow, not just tomorrow. Tomorrow doesn't hold anything when the life expectancy is 57. So Leap has written 11 books, and you'd congratulate us, we've reached 50,000 people. But in a country of 170 million, that's a drop in the ocean. So I wanted this organization to scale because I really felt it hadn't made a difference. Similarly, we started ACE Foods. ACE is about 6 years old. And what ACE tries to do is tap into 60% of our population that works in agriculture, address the issues around malnutrition, where 37% of our children are stunted, and displace imports. Because we have all this great food that's cultivated, yet it's not processed. And so we started this company to source from farmers, process for the local market. We're working with 5,000 farmers, but in a country with 17 million farmers, you know that we've only scratched the surface. So it's a very personal desire to learn how to scale. And my personal dream is that the initiatives I've started and the other ones that I've helped start will scale and reach more people. Now, the big takeaways from the book and the research was that scaling is not an African problem. It's a global problem. Even in the UK, social innovators are struggling to scale. But there's some unique attributes of the continent which make it even more difficult. And those who have invested across the world used their knowledge and said, you know, Africa is most similar to South Asia when it comes to the challenges of scaling. And I pulled out 4. The first is lack of credible data. For anyone who's tried to do any great projects on the continent and has tried to find credible data, there are always holes. And we're often forced to extrapolate and make assumptions because there are often large gaps or some years that are missing or some regions that are missing. And this data is critical for scaling because you really need to understand what baseline you're starting with. What are the real needs? I mean, I applaud Afford's work around financial innovation. But the truth is, we don't even, if you wanted to find a map that says, where are all, you know, what percentage of young people got financing in Sierra Leone last year? You know, and which regions? That data is not available. So you might assume that there's a gap, but you actually start doing the work and you realize there are tons of people providing financing, they just can't, you know, this is just what often happens because of this lack of credible data. The second thing is the heterogeneity within and across communities. And we all know how diverse our continent is. And in my country alone, over 360 languages. Within those languages, multiple dialects. But the complexity is not just around language. The complexity is around who has authority. If you want to start a program in Kano, Kano is in northern Nigeria, who do you think has authority in Kano? Is it the state government? Or is it the imam? Or is it the emir? Or is it the local government chairman? So the complexity is around the role of traditional institutions, the role of religious institutions, and the role of the government at multiple levels. And that makes scaling even more difficult. The fragmented ecosystems, I work in agriculture, as I mentioned, and if you have a great innovation around a new seed technology, how do you get it to farmers? When every farmer is working on less than 1 hectare, and when they say the farmer is in a small part of Kaduna State, you imagine that they'll be next door to each other, but there are like 4 trees and rivers between this farmer and that farmer, and they rarely talk to each other. So you actually have to put them in clusters because you can't go house to house trying to scale. And that's because some of our sectors, agriculture, health, education, are extremely fragmented. And then finally, we all know about the significant talent, infrastructure, and financing gaps that exist. Now, in spite of these challenges, there are organizations that are scaling. And how are they scaling? Why are they scaling? The first big takeaway is that they recognize that there's a difference between trying to scale a business in the for-profit context and scaling in non-profit context. Even though we're passion-driven, we want to make impact, we all need a strong and a clear mission, very clear values, an understanding of what type of structure we're going to have. And there's so much innovation around structure. Are we going to be a for-profit, a non-profit, or a hybrid? And can some aspects of our business be non-profit and other aspects be for-profit? Gone are the days when you have to pick one. Now you can actually be both. What pathway are you going to take? Are you going to go through a franchise model? Are you going to scale organically? Are you going to scale in partnership with the government, etc.? The business model that you have, and then these 4 pillars which are critical: talent and leadership, financing, and partnerships. And I love this quote from Nelson Mandela, which says, "Vision without action is just a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. And vision with action can change the world." And oftentimes we have great visions. If I went around this room and asked all of you what your vision for your continent was, we would hear some amazing speeches. Many people have articulated them. Governments have Vision 2020, 2030. Every single country represented here has a vision document. But what has happened between the vision and the action? Very limited. So when we think about theories of change, there are lots of examples. And in the book, I don't give case studies saying synergy is the answer to all the problems. No, I'm just picking aspects of their work that are worthy of emulation. And with synergy, it's very important to think about the fact that they started with the end in sight. And this is why my sister, who's doing her visioning statement, is oftentimes we start a social initiative because we see a problem that makes us angry and we want to address it. But we don't think about what success looks like at scale. Synergy has started with that in mind. And their vision is big. 8 million people in slums in Kenya, 4.1 billion worldwide lack access to hygienic sanitation. So that's the core group. They're not saying, oh, in my little village, children don't go to school, so I'm going to start with a few scholarships or a library. They're saying, what is the root cause of the problem and what are we going to do about it? And they also have a hybrid model where they've engaged entrepreneurs to manage the toilets. These entrepreneurs collect the waste. Another set of entrepreneurs operate the vehicles that transport the waste, and then that waste is being converted to fertilizer. And this is in the slums of Kenya. Now, what are the components of business models that scale? First, they have to be demand-driven. And we take this for granted when we think about social innovation. Because we all believe we're experts in our area and we want to start something. Yesterday at LSE, a man stood up and said, you know what, I really want to do something in healthcare. I've come up with this great idea, mobile health. M-Health for Africa. I'm sure there are quite a few of you who are passionate about M-Health. And he articulated what he wanted to do. And oftentimes we hear that, but then you try to implement it and you realize people are not willing, they don't want it. Just because you think they need it doesn't mean they want it. When we started Ace Foods, our first products were jams. Because 40 to 60% of our fruits and vegetables go to waste. I looked at the history of the world, and every country that has processed food starts with canning and putting things in jars. And I came up with this great idea: pineapple jam, mango jam, papaya jam, agbalumo jam. You think about, and so we started and we won a business plan competition with jams, baby food. And then we sold them to Nigerians. Nigerians said, we want strawberry jam. Jam is supposed to be red. So what jam can I make that's red? So we actually went back and we created a mixed fruit jam based on watermelon. But then watermelon doesn't have much of a taste. So you have to put coloring and sugar. And then it becomes what? Flavored water. How does that get to our mission? Our mission was to help farmers improve their livelihoods, improve the nutritional status of our people. So we had to go back to the drawing board and say, this is not working. 0.05% of our population will buy pineapple jam, mango jam, papaya jam. But the rest of the people want strawberry jam or flavored water. So you have to be what? Demand-driven. And you see this oftentimes, orange flesh sweet potato. How many of you have heard of orange flesh sweet potato? Has vitamin A, tons of money, millions of dollars have been pumped into orange flesh sweet potato, and they've struggled to gain acceptance because people eat sweet potato, but they want what color? White. They want white sweet potato. The concept of sweet potato is not orange. So demand-driven is critical. Second is that you have to have measurable impact. I think gone are the days when a few nice stories of how children's lives were changed is compelling enough for anybody to take you seriously. So really understanding what your impact is and how it's changing lives is critical. And then the simplicity of the model. If a model is too complex, by the time you start scaling, it's like the telephone game. I say something, by the time Pamela hears it, it's become something else. If it's not simple, there are no clear systems and structures, you will lose the impact part, and the story will end up being a non-successful one. The fourth is engaging the community. So many of us come in from outside a community, introduce an initiative to the community doesn't own it. When the funding is over, the project is over, because they just feel like they don't have a say. Leveraging technology. I think we're in a unique time in our history where technology reduces the cost of everything. It enables us to measure more effectively. It enables us to reach people faster. And finally, low cost. And I'll walk through a simple example. How many of you have heard of the play pump? So in 2006, I was at the World Economic Forum. The play pump was celebrated as the next big thing to solve Africa's water challenges. Stephen Case invested in it, Laura Bush endorsed it, and this was the model. Children would play in a merry-go-round. The water would go into this reservoir, and P&G and Coca-Cola could advertise, so multiple streams of income. Then the woman's life would be transformed because she wouldn't have to walk for 2 hours to get water. So then they tried to scale, and what did they find? Children would have to play for 26 hours to fill this tank. When children play for 26 hours, what is it? It's work. It's no longer play. They also found out that each play pump costs $10,000. And boreholes are between $2,000 and $3,000. In some places even lower. And that when the play pump broke, the villagers could not fix it. And this is a classic example. So a lot of people have written about the play pump. How many of our initiatives are play pumps? So many. Lots of donor initiatives, lots of funder initiatives are play pumps. The unit cost to deliver to one person is so expensive. So when you need to deliver to 1 million people, you give up. So many of our projects are touted as successful at the pilot phase, but then they taper off when we try to scale. But I want to mention that not all ideas should be scaled. There are some that after the pilot you realize, gosh, great, but let this serve as a center of excellence. Do you understand? It should be a center of excellence. Let others just view it and be inspired to start something else. Not every idea should be scaled, and it's not unique to Africa. When Patrick Awa started Ashesi, I was so excited. And I called him up one day. I said, Patrick, I'd love to start Ashesi Nigeria, focus on agriculture. And he said, I have no interest in starting any other school. Do you understand? That's his vision. State of the art, they're doing great work. 97% of their graduates get jobs in the first 6 months. Global jobs. And this is a leading university in Ghana. How many people here have been to see Ashesi? So a few of you. So the point is, you can have state-of-the-art examples. Jacaranda, another organization I interviewed, first started off saying, we figured out how to get the cost of having babies in Kenya to $80. And we're going to have clinics all over the country to address the high rates of maternal mortality. But then as they developed, they said, you know what, we've learned how to be innovative with our methodology. Let's teach the government how to use this. So we're just going to have 2 clinics, and we're going to go and train primary healthcare workers and workers in public hospitals on how to have babies efficiently and safely. So there are many, many approaches. We don't all have to have our own organizations reaching millions. So think through the ideal structure, whether it should be non-profit, for-profit, or hybrid, your value proposition versus the desired need, the costs, and I've mentioned that a lot, and the simplicity. Clear systems and structures, 0 room for error. So I have a whole chapter focused on business models for scaling. And when I think about measuring impact, one of the organizations that I think does a really good job of measuring its impact is One Acre Fund. Some of you have heard of One Acre Fund. And I'm not saying One Acre Fund is a model for excellence. I'm just saying I love how they measure impact. And I love the fact that they didn't just measure impact after the fact, which is many organizations say, in 2014 we were able to do X. They project their impact. So in 2016, we're going to do, 2017, we're going to achieve this impact on the lives of people. Funders love it. Partners love it. Collaborators love it. Private sector does it, right? Companies have already issued out their projections for 2017, but in the social space, we always look backward instead of forward. And this has enabled them to raise significant amounts of money. And you can see how many people they are planning to reach in 2017. 520,000 farmers.